This past winter, I found myself in Baja, driving down from the border of California to the very tip of the peninsula and everywhere in between. This wasn't anything unusual for me. I have been driving all around the world, together with my husband and 3 kids, for a long time now. But this visit to Baja was different. I was different. So much of me is given away in the everyday. It's just how it is when you're a mom and one that lives a life on the road. I remember the moment it happened. I found myself standing in the desert, soaking in the warm golden rays of the sun, as I try to do at the end of each day, camera in hand. In the corner of my eye, I see an osprey sitting on top of a cardoon cactus, one of the many cacti as far as my eye can see. And then, a few tiny flitting verdins around Ocotillo, a loud thrasher being, loud, and a cactus wren singing its heart out in the distance with a harshness that echoes the desert itself. And then I turn my head towards the sea to see brown pelicans in a single file line mere inches over the water, heading to roost as the light of the day starts to fade. Being a bird nerd is something I've always been. It's always something that brought joy to my life, but I've never made it part of my life, part of my everyday. And on that quiet beach in Baja, I vowed that it would be. So as I continue to travel to new faraway places, I want to share the birds that make me smile, the birds that allow me to quietly coexist in their space, focusing on a single species, or maybe a few at a time. We'll see. But let's start with the bird that made a near daily appearance in my life while in the deserts of Baja, the brown pelican. If you ever needed proof that birds evolved from dinosaurs, here you go. Just look at them. These amazing creatures haven't changed much in the past 30 million years. Same beak, same pouch as the oldest pelican fossil discovered in Egypt. The brown pelican is a large brown-gray bird, one of the 3 species present in the Americas and one of the 8 species worldwide. And even though they present themselves as one of the largest seabirds in the Americas, with a wingspan that can reach 6.5 feet, they are actually the smallest of all the pelicans. You can pretty easily pick out the adults from the juveniles. The juveniles have brown feathers all over, with brown skin around their eyes, while the mature birds, at age 3, have white feathers on their heads and necks and a dull gray eye ring during the non-breeding season. But during breeding, you'll notice a light yellow egg wash on their white head feathers, and their eye rings will turn pink. The females and males are very similar and difficult to tell apart. So what makes this bird so unique? Well, let's start off with one of its many special traits, diving. If you ever see a pelican 60 feet up in the air, diving beak first into the sea, it's the brown pelican. They have learned over time that diving for fish at or near 90 degrees reduces that pesky water refraction issue, thus vastly improving their aim. When you watch the brown pelican dive, you might have noticed that at the very last second, moments before it hits the water, it rotates its body to the left. It does this to avoid hurting its esophagus and trachea, which are oriented on the right side of its neck. Pretty smart. In addition to rotating left, it also inflates special subcutaneous air sacs beneath its skin that act like shock absorbers to protect internal organs from impact. It quite often submerges itself completely, but because of these air sacs, the brown pelican is quite buoyant in the water and therefore can't dive to deep depths. On a successful attempt, its pouch balloons up with both prey and water. Once out of the water, it puts its head down against its breast to compress the pouch, spills the seawater from a small opening of its beak, and flicks its head back to swallow its catch whole. The whole process of spilling and eating doesn't take too long, anywhere from 15 seconds to a minute, because the sooner the fish is in its stomach, the sooner it will have a better center of gravity. And don't worry about the brown pelican drinking seawater. It is actually capable of drinking salt water thanks to the high capacity of its salt glands. The salt gland sits above the eye, draws salt ions out of the bloodstream, and then excretes salt from its nostrils. So if you see water dripping from a nostril or beak, or if you see it sneeze, the pelican is most likely ridding itself of excess salt, a trait that allows it to survive in harsh environments without access to fresh water, like Baja. And that takes us to the next unique pelican feature, its famous Gular Pouch, a featherless, stretchy skin that joins the lower mandible of the beak to the bird's neck. The pouch itself can hold up to 3 gallons of water, as opposed to its stomach, which can only hold 1 gallon. But its pouch is not only used for catching and carrying its prey. It plays an important role in thermoregulation too. By zooming into its pouch, you can see just how many blood vessels are running through it. Large birds overheat more easily than smaller birds, so it's key to have specialized ways to regulate body temperature. A pelican dissipates heat in numerous ways, like splaying out its wings, increasing blood flow to its feet, panting, and also increasing blood flow to its pouch. So if you ever see a pelican fluttering its pouch, it's in the process of cooling itself down. You also might notice it stretching its pouch as well, which is its way of maintaining a healthy pouch by keeping it flexible. Feeding pelicans fish discarded carcasses or fishing near them with hooks is not a wise decision. A tear in the pouch can be a life or death situation for these amazing birds. Compared to the size of its beak, the pelican's tongue is quite small and considered rudimentary. But even though it is small and it doesn't help catch prey or manipulate the prey into its digestive tract, it is important since the muscle controls the pouch by allowing the spillage of water after catching prey. And speaking of its beak, brown pelicans are considered mouth breathers. Because it dives for food, its nostrils are under a protective layer, so it always has its beak slightly open, breathing through the sides. Another unique feature of the pelicans is Totipalmate feet. What? Totipalmate. Most seabirds have palmate feet, meaning 3 digits forward and webbed with 1 digit pointing backwards. But the pelican has Totipalmate feet, meaning that all 4 of their digits are webbed. This is unique to all pelicans, but also to cormorants, boobies, gannets, and frigate birds. Notice how the feet are set far back on its body. This makes its feet efficient for swimming, but on land, let's just say clumsy is the nicest word I have for its walking skills. The brown pelican, both female and male, also use its large feet to cradle eggs during the nesting season. It lacks a brood patch, that featherless patch on its abdomen like most other birds have, and thus uses its highly vascularized Totipalmate feet instead. And that brings us to past issues that affected the species. Back in the 70s, when the poisonous agricultural chemical DDT was a huge problem, the pelicans were listed in the United States Endangered Species Act. DDT was causing the eggs to thin and crack underfoot. Luckily, with the ban of DDT, the pelican is back to being a species of least concern. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, lots of birds were killed for their feathers for hat making, but the pelicans were killed for other body parts. Their gular pouches were used for purses and tobacco bags. Fledgling snow white down was used for powder puffs, and their hollow bones for pipes. In 1903, Theodore Roosevelt created Florida's Pelican Island, the very first national wildlife refuge to protect this species and others from hunters. And before I say goodbye, I wanted to share my favorite memory of the brown pelican during my time in Baja. Remember when I mentioned earlier that the pelican has a highly vascularized pouch? Well, it also has sensory nerves running through it as well, allowing them to forage for fish in the dark because they can feel when something enters its pouch. But as I surprisingly found out, that's not the only trait they use for night hunting. While standing on the deck of our ferry, one that would take us from Baja to mainland Mexico, I was purposely soaking up the last bits of Baja, a place that will always be near to my heart, a place I know I won't see again for a few years. As we were pulling from the dock, the captain turned on bright floodlights all around the ferry to help guide them out to open sea. As soon as those lights were on, the brown pelicans appeared, and the night diving began. I stood there on the deck in awe of what I was witnessing, and as quickly as the night hunt began, it was over, just like my time in Baja. Thank you for the memorable send-off, brown pelicans. Until next time.